Hello, I'm John Feldt. This is the weekly water outlook for the southeast U.S. Well, here's the jet stream pattern. It's been well to our north over the last week. You might have heard about the record high temperatures over parts of the upper Midwest and the northeast U.S. And we also have this area of low pressure that's been drifting off to the west. Now, generally speaking, those type of overall synoptic patterns did not impact us over the last week. Now, they brought certainly notable temperature and precipitation trends to part of the nation, but not to the southeast U.S. Now, I did want to talk about the tropics. The tropics are usually something we can maybe look at out there, but right now it looks pretty quiet. I don't see a whole lot. There's not much at all in the Atlantic. Look how look how quiet it is here, and all these areas here very quiet. I did want to show this here, and this isn't really any organization, and the Hurricane Center is not really forecasting any organization, but it is an area of tropical moisture. And looking at the models, I think there's some hint that that might move up towards the northeast over the next week or so. Most likely not pushing inland because of the upper flow, and I'll be talking about that. But it could hug the coast to bring some heavy rain. Let's just keep an eye on it for right now. It's not forecast to be any organization with it, but it does look to me like it could pull inland a bit and maybe give us a little bit of heavier rain than normally would be expected. So looking at the rain over the last 7 days over the southeast U.S., every single week I think we've had some significant rain in areas. We've had weeks that have been extreme, weeks that have been quieter. This one maybe a little bit more in the middle. Areas of green, an inch or so, areas of yellow, 2 inches of rain. And really what we're seeing here is a cumulative overall progression as we go through the summer staying very wet. Now, the eastern parts of North Carolina, parts of Virginia, lighter amounts of rain this week. So not everybody received a soaking rain, but most areas did receive at least some rain. And that's why when we look at the percent of normal for the last week, and this is actually just the last week, we do see pockets of green, pockets of red, and that's showing that even though it did rain, some areas received heavier rain than other spots. Very much hard to characterize here one way or the other, with the exception of North Carolina, eastern North Carolina, Virginia. That was very dry, and that's indicated by that area of red. So if we look at the precipitation anomaly so far in July, and this is from July 1st through 20th, no surprise to y'all, very wet. We see these precipitation amounts of 200% of normal over large areas, but the entire southeast U.S. is in green, and that's saying that we have positive or wet precipitation anomalies. And again, like I said, that's no surprise to y'all. I did also look at the temperature anomalies, and with all those clouds and rain, temperature anomalies are negative or cooler than normal. So the number of rain days here, I think it's pretty amazing seeing these areas of blue over the higher elevation of the Appalachians, parts of the southeast Georgia, parts of South Carolina, parts of Florida. We're looking at days of 21 to 25 days over the last 30 days when there's been some measurable rain. Maybe even more importantly, look at the area of dark green or greater, and that's 16 days or more. So I think it's fair to say that most areas of the southeast U.S. have been receiving measurable rain at least every other day for the last 30 days. So the evaporative stress index, this sort of gives some idea of if there's enough moisture in the ground for crops for evapotranspiration. And you can see over the southeast U.S. it ranges generally from normal into the green, and that would say excess amounts of moisture as one would expect. Now, stream flow has been consistently running high. I've mentioned before that this is a vulnerability going into tropical season. I also mentioned that I don't see this improving much going through tropical season as we get into it, even though it's another month or so away. And you can see we're still running with these areas in black. These are very high stream flows near or above flood stage in a few spots along the coast, but pretty much everywhere else is much above normal. The exception is the far western parts of the southeast U.S., Alabama, Mississippi. Some spots are normal. Keep in mind, I've said this, I'm going to say this many times, this is a vulnerability for inland flooding as we get into the tropical season, the peak of tropical season later in the summer and early this fall. So the jet stream is going to be changing very significantly over the week. It's been anchored well to the north. Now the area in blue, the jet stream in blue, is showing that it's going to begin to dip into the eastern U.S. and dip south. You You might remember this is very similar to what we saw the jet stream pattern late June into early July. And then next week I have in green, and it really dips down to the southeast U.S. Now this is going to, in a very general sense, hot and dry weather west, cooler and showery weather east. This is exactly what we had earlier in July and late June. Looks very, very similar, and that did bring wet weather to the southeast U.S. Now the next 7 days, here's the rainfall forecast. We've sort of been flip-flopping here from one week to the next, and that's good in that, remember last week, North Carolina didn't receive as much rain, so they're beginning to dry out, but they were wet the week before. Last week, Alabama, not as much. This week, they're going to get some more. So at least we haven't had the heaviest rain one week to the next right over the same area. Now we have in some cases, but not over the last 3 or 4 weeks. So here's a rainfall forecast. I did want to say I think there's a lot of uncertainty in this. The relatively quiet spot right in here, I'm not real confident with that because I think some of that jet energy could be digging into that area, could bring in some of that moisture from the Atlantic into that area. So right now I'm a little bit, I would say this is somewhat of a low confidence forecast. So the takeaway points, significant shift in the jet stream this week, continued wet. I think this pattern of 50% of the days, some rain, looks like it will continue. We'll keep an eye on the tropical moisture off the Atlantic coast. Right now there are no signs that'll develop, but I think it could pull some of it in right along the immediate coast. And this is a persistent pattern right into August. Nice talking to you all, and I will be updating this briefing again next week.